live or not. It's like such an unknown technology. We're never quite sure what we're doing. I'm Marissa Lowen. I'm your host. I have my extra large cup. I always talk about medium coffee, but really we're looking at like a 20. It's handmade. It's like amazing. I love it. It's one of my favorite mugs. Welcome, Lacy Boggs. I'm so excited. I was telling you, people were messaging me and be like, oh, Lacy. And I was like, give me all the dirt. Like, what do I know? What do you know? Like, what should I be asking? I was ready to be a hard all they had was good things to say about you. So that's
damn.
I know. I was like, come on, guys, no, everyone had good things. So I'm excited to hear more about what you're doing. Why don't you introduce yourself so that we can dive right into the content?
Awesome. Thank you. It's always weird for me when people are like acting like I'm internet famous, because I really feel that way most of my life. But yeah, I've got my 16-ounce somewhat branded cup with me.
I love it.
So we're good to go. So I'm Lacy Boggs. If you don't know me, I run the Content Direction Agency. We are an agency for small business owners to help them create the content between launches that keeps your audience nurtured, growing, and primed to say hell yes to whatever your next offer is. So we do all that awesome blogging and emailing in between launches, so you don't have to.
I love a box of big questions. Is this a hell yes or a hell no? And it's really being able to be certain of what it is before you move forward allows you to save time and money in your business. And also just feels good. It feels good to be doing those hell yeses more than the hell nos. Sometimes we have to do hell nos like taxes, but let's be real. I try to do the hell yeses more often than the hell nos. So why did you get into content marketing?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a long and winding road. In my past life, I was a journalist. I was a food writer and associate editor of a magazine here in Colorado. And then I got pregnant and I couldn't quite imagine doing 60-hour weeks and 3 a.m. deadlines with a baby. And also we did the math, and more than half of my very small journalist salary would have gone to childcare. And we were like, that sucks. Let's not do that. So I stayed home with Devin, our daughter. And this was like 2011. And so I started a food blog because that's what everybody did in 2011.
Yeah.
Plus I was a food writer, so that made sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand what the business model of a food blog was. So the blog itself did great. Like I grew my email list by like 1,000 people. I got invited to post on one of Martha Stewart's websites and all this stuff. And I made like $3,000 the whole year. I lovingly refer to that as my 4-figure year.
Yeah.
So after that, my husband was like, I love that you're staying home with the baby, but I need you to make a little more money. And I was like, I've got a new idea. And so I decided maybe other people would hire me to do this blogging thing for them. Turned out that was a much better business model for me. So I started out just a one-woman show, and then we've grown from there. And that was 9 years ago. So we've been doing this for a while now.
Cool. So how many clients do you work with typically in a year with the agency?
Sure. So typically we have anywhere from like 6 to 10 retainers at any given time. And a retainer is a minimum 6-month commitment. And some people have been with us like 6 or 7 years. So it just depends, what their needs are for the company.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of, and this kind of leads into one of our topics, but I kind of like the idea of having consistent communication in your business. And I laugh because I'm horrible at it. Even though I spent 20 plus years as a communicator, an email marketer, like this literally was my corporate profession, was to encourage companies to provide consistent, inclusive, diverse communication. And then I get to my business and I'm like, let's see what happens. However,
children have no shoes, right? That's always the case.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I always give like this example. People are like, if somebody has bad social media or a bad website and they're like a social media manager and a website designer, I'm going to hire them. Like, no, because that means they're too busy to do their own stuff. Don't hire the ones who's like, looks really perfect. However, I do believe in really great communication. And I like that the idea of having a retainer, not only does that free up the business owner and the business to do what they do best. We just because we make good bread doesn't mean we know how to talk about making good bread.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so being able to have support in that area from people who do know how to talk about making really great bread is really great. But it means that they're communicating consistently because they have you on retainer and there's 3 or daily or whatever their needs look like, because it does vary between businesses. They can actually have that support and it's being done and they don't have to think about it.
Right. And we specialize in doing it in their voice. So that's something that a lot of my clients are concerned about because they've never outsourced that kind of content. They might have outsourced a sales page or maybe some website content or something, but they've never outsourced that content that feels like they're having a conversation. And so they're very concerned about, will it sound like me? Will it be in my voice? And so we specialize in making sure it's in your voice so that if you don't want to tell anybody that you've outsourced it, nobody ever needs to know. Your mother can't tell the difference, you know?
Yeah, I do love that. I actually had an amazing social media manager who literally could talk in my voice. We were like, I froze. Talk about yourself.
It's okay. It's kind of a cute picture of you.
You can still hear me? You can still hear me though.
Hear you. Yes.
Okay, well, I'll say it's a cute picture of me talking, but here's the thing. People couldn't tell it was me, but this person also had known me for 14 years. Like,
yeah,
absolutely they could take on my voice. So that's a special skill. How do you know that you have that skill of taking on other people's voice?
Know that I had it when I started. I didn't know that other people couldn't do it, is I guess what I want to say. Like, and when I got started in this business, there were a couple of big name copywriters who made their living writing as themselves, and everybody wanted their stuff to sound like that person's stuff, right? But I always thought that was a little backwards, because it's like if you ever stop working with them or they don't do the writing anymore, there's going to be this huge shift. So I started working with a brand designer who was really interested in having her voice. And when she realized I could do that, she was the one that pointed out to me, hey, this is special. And so when I realized that was a special thing that not everybody could do, it was really an aha moment for me. And then I had to figure out how to hire for it, because, you know, as we were hiring more writers, I had to figure out how to hire for that skill, which is tricky. So we actually end up usually hiring people who either come from a journalism background because they're really good at interviewing and synthesizing information, or who come from a fiction background because I think they tend to have lots of different voices in their head and they know how to write in different voices. So, but just to keep talking about that until Marissa comes back, you know, one of the ways we do that is we put together a brand voice style guide for our clients. And this is something you can do for yourself, even if you're not hiring us. If you're hiring anybody who's going to produce content for you, you know, a brand style guide, you're probably familiar with, that shows like your colors and your fonts and your logos and whatever. But a brand voice style guide is more specifically about what does your voice sound like? And so we talk about like syntax and grammar and diction and what type of tone. Is it really personal? Is it really friendly? Or is it super corporate? Do we swear? Do we not swear? Et cetera, et cetera. So like all those things go into a brand voice style guide. And if y'all want, I can give Marissa the link. We offer a template for this if it's something you're interested in. But that's one big way that we figure out how to, there you are, hello. That's one big way we figure out how to write in other people's voices. I just kept going.
I know, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is fine. It's just, it's something about my internet. It's going to be like this ongoing joke in the show is like, find the spot where Marissa freezes. So, and it's always me. It's just, we got to figure out the whole internet connection, or I got to like wire my computer to my modem that's in the ceiling above the fridge, you know, like all these little things that we have to do as business owners to try and like, you know, get our communication out. No, it was great. I was hearing you. And this is interesting because I think a lot of people might not understand why they would hire a content marketing, whether you said they're right. They're afraid that it's not going to be in their, you know, that they put on things of having someone else do it. Right. But the idea is that you're actually hiring people that know how to do that.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah,
exactly. And a lot of the way we do that is we start out by interviewing them, right? So we're going to go through, we're going to read your old blogs. We're going to look at your Facebook Live videos. We're going to read your posts. We're going to do our research, watch your webinars if you have them, that kind of thing. But then we're also going to, the writer usually meets with the client once a month-ish and interviews them for that month's content. So we're going to get your special sauce. It's still going to be your ideas. We're just going to translate it into, and polish it up and make it pretty, right? And the other thing is like, I love to prioritize long relationships because that's when the real magic starts to happen. When we start to know your business really well, I always talk about we become mini experts in whatever your thing is, because when
Right.
we start to know your business really well, then it's like there's less and less input needed from the client, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we do this in corporate all the time. Corporations hire people to write their blogs and write their marketing content. So why wouldn't small and medium businesses do it too? Like, take
Right,
advantage
exactly.
of this. So the other thing is interesting. You said becoming mini experts. So let's talk about thought leaders, because I
Yeah.
actually really find this term, and you brought it up, and I find it a really interesting term. What does a thought leader mean to you? Like, if I say thought leader, like,
Right.
who is that?
I mean, I think a lot of people go immediately to people like Seth Godin as a thought leader, people who have books. I think of James Clear, things like that. For me, a thought leader is anybody who is putting out content with the intention of influencing the conversation in their niche. So
Mm.
it doesn't matter if your niche is tiny, but you're putting out content that you're like, hey, I want to change the conversation. That's a thought leader, right? So it doesn't have to me, that definition doesn't have to include like how big your following is or whether you've written a book or whatever, if you've been on Oprah, right? But it's more like, are you trying to lead the conversation with your thoughts?
Interesting. My brain just went like I had like 10,000 questions. So, like, do we want to become? Do we all want to become the thought leaders? Like, is that something we all should strive to do, or is that
Yeah, I
something that?
don't think, not necessarily, but I feel like it is a good way if you have strong opinions about something. If there's something you want to influence or change in your industry, it's a great way to differentiate yourself, right? Because here's the real, and I know you know this, there's so much noise online right now.
Yes.
There's so much noise, and
Yes.
getting your message heard is really challenging. And so in order to find a way, you either have to find a new medium, a new way of talking about it. You have to be really
Mhm.
funny or pretty or whatever,
Yeah.
or you say something different, right? And so thought leadership to me is when you're like, hey, I saw this thing and I don't agree with it, or I'd like to change it, or I'd like to have a conversation about it. And it's different, right? And that's going to elevate you above that noise.
It was interesting because this morning someone asked me why I use the term post-colonial capitalism when other people are using like anti-capitalism, and I'm like, because if we take away capitalism, which feels familiar to a lot of people, they immediately will put up a wall or a barrier because it's too much change.
Can't
And so
imagine it. Yeah.
can't imagine it. Like, how is it even possible? My whole life would change. I won't be able to make any money. I'll be poor. Like all of these kind of like beliefs come rushing in depending on the propaganda or the narrative or the stories that are being told around us by friends, family, media, movies. All of this kind of stuff comes in. We don't even know that we're taking in this information. It's coming in. And so if I was to say like anti-capitalism, which isn't really what I mean anyways, it'll stop the conversation from happening. Whereas a lot of
Right.
people are like, oh, you talk about this like post-colonial capitalism, so we can still have capitalism, and like we can have parts of capitalism, or we can change the parts we
What it
like about
is. Yeah.
capitalism to be even better so that we're not capitalizing on other people. We have capital and we're
Right.
building stuff, we're building foundations, and we have free market, but we're not exploiting other people and resources in order for us to have a short-term benefit. And
Yeah.
like that kind of conversation. But you're right. If I was to just keep going out like I'm not gonna hit the people that I'm necessarily talking to. I'm not gonna be able to have that. So coming up with a different way or seeing what works. So basically thought leaders are like scientists, and they're just trying out
Yeah.
ways, but they're also willing to stick with like, I guess, like an idea, or at least a basis of an idea to explore and put out there.
Right. And I think it's really important that you said that about scientists and exploring. We're running a beta program right now called Thought Leader Lab. And that's
Okay.
exactly why we called it that, because it's a lab, it's an experiment. You have to try things. And, even when I think of somebody like Seth Godin, who is undoubtedly a thought leader in the marketing space, right? His daily posts are experiments. He's
Mm-hmm.
testing the waters to see what lands. Not every post is going to make it into his next book or his next keynote,
No.
right? But when he lands on something that's like, oh, that got a bazillion comments, more than usual, or that really opened up an interesting conversation, or that made him think of 15 more things, right? That's how he can tell what's going to have legs. And it really is, it's a process for sure.
Yeah, I also think of like TikTok, where like the people who are really killing it on TikTok, they actually have a premise that they say 15, 50, 60,000 times. And occasionally the people who are seeing all of the ways that they're communicating will say, I've already heard you say this. But the thing is, it's not
everybody has.
Not everybody has. Also, not everybody has consumed it. They might have seen it or they might have heard it, but they haven't actually processed what that is or that idea.
Yeah.
So exactly. It is that experiment of trying the different ways and seeing who responds to it and running with it.
Yeah, and which version for sure. Yeah, my friend Michelle Mazer, I don't know if you know her, her book is The 3-Word Rebellion, but she talks about how you have to repeat your message over and over and over and over and over again to make it really stick and become part of your brand and part of the zeitgeist, whatever zeitgeist you're in. I just like zeitgeist.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like you have to be willing to say it over. I always kind of laugh at like clients where they'll say, "Oh, I put out an idea and nobody bought it." I'm like, "You put it out once on a Monday night at 11 p.m. in one Facebook group. I saw you." Like you, and I know that there's a bit of a thing where people will say like master one social media. Like, so if you're gonna master Instagram and be the master of Instagram, but the reality is that your message might not float on Instagram. Or it might not float on, the TikTok or the Facebook or all these kind of different things. It's kind of like experimenting and kind of seeing what does take off or what does allow you to have that, and then expanding into the other areas, but investing in that one focus. And that can be ideas too. You said Seth, he puts out, something every day. They're different topics. There might be like 4 or 5 that he kind of rotates through, but he does cycle through to see what's currently being picked up by everyone.
Yeah, totally. I've also been thinking a lot lately about the idea of like a show your work channel. So I feel like we have channels where we want everything to look perfect. Like maybe that's your Instagram grid, right? That's a big deal to having your aesthetic or whatever. But there are other channels that we have where we can experiment more, right? And so I'm calling this, I think I stole this from somebody. If anybody knows where I attributed this to, please let me know. But calling it your show your work channel, where it's like, I'm just going to, maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's stories, maybe it's something that feels less, heavy, less important, and you can just put out these messages and try it and see what people bite on. And I feel like having that where it's a little lower stakes can help you feel more inclined to experiment and throw out those thought leadership ideas that may feel a little scary.
I like the idea that too. I often talk about like story marketing and like the thing is like we might actually have 4 or 5 social media channels, our blog, our Pinterest, YouTube, all of these ways that we communicate, even other people's podcasts, other people's platforms. The idea is that if we can actually not necessarily repeat the same story, the same content across all of them, is actually to give those different sections. So part of that is like, the behind the scenes. The Instagram, you might see the finished cake. But the YouTube, you see the how-to ice, or the TikTok, they show the ingredients being put into the cake. So there's actually a reason for people to actually go to all of your social media channels to get the different parts of the story that all add up to the end result.
Yeah, exactly. I love that idea. I love that idea of putting different pieces on different channels. Plus, when you think about it, like how-to content on YouTube, for example, is what does incredibly well. Whereas, somebody just talking about something that happened to them might not do as well, right? But on Instagram stories, somebody telling about their day, people love that, right? They're going to watch that all day long. So each different channel has different types of content that do better.
Yeah. Sure. And it also allows you to say, hey, if you love this, go check out the finished cake on Instagram, which then they go follow. And this is the reality right now. We cannot depend on any one platform. Even our own website could go disappear at any given moment, or the email list could get deleted. Or the reality is Nothing is really yours. People always say your email list is always yours. I was an email marketer for 10 years. It's not. No, people change their email addresses. Things get deleted, ESPs. And like the reality is even that could go. So having people be connected on the different channels as well allows you to pivot and focus if something all of a sudden became not available to you.
Well, and I'm betting people listening to us right now are like, okay, yes, great. That sounds awesome. But that sounds like a crap ton of work, right?
Yes.
And I think that's where a service like ours comes in, at least in part, because what we can do is, if you're making the YouTube video, if you're doing the TikTok, if you're doing whatever it is, we can take those things and turn them into articles. We can put them into a format on your blog, which is great for SEO, right? We can turn it into an email newsletter, which is nurturing that part. We can create Instagram captions that go with it, right? I don't have the technology to like make a YouTube video of you today. Like that's just not what we do. Well, you wouldn't want me to anyway. But the point being, like, we can take the stuff that only you can do and turn it into other pieces that are valuable, useful, and doing that you were just talking about. So we're hitting people in different places, because there's people who can't or choose not to watch video or listen to audio, right? If there are people who are visually impaired or deaf or whatever, they need something, the written word. So that's a great thing for accessibility, as well as, like I said, SEO. Lots of good reasons to still be blogging.
Absolutely. I think we forgot about blogging for a while. And, well, for me, it was actually when Google like got rid of like their RSS feed. It was such an easy button. And I had like literally I would get up every day and I would look at my RSS feed, my little list, and I would go visit all my blogs and catch up. And then they were like, we're no longer doing this. And I was like, oh. And then I forgot.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I actually really love blogs. I think also we don't actually care about your tortoise Joe who ate the leaf that, you were going to make the salad. And so you end up having to make the cinnamon or whatever the tale is.
Right.
Like, I might care about that, but I don't also want to wade through 30,000 ads that you've put to get Google ad revenue. Like, figure out how to update the story, which I think is really interesting too when we look at content marketing. If you're just putting out content marketing for SEO, cool.
There's more we can do with it.
There's so much more we can do with it. And part of it too is actually really being able to communicate. And I like that you said too about accessibility. We're talking about always inclusivity. The reality is that not everybody can hear your podcast. Not everybody can, and they might be able to hear it, but they also can't necessarily process the words. There's audio processing. So you have the show notes, you have the full transcript, which allows people to do it. I'm an incredibly fast reader. I consume content incredibly. I might not listen to your podcast, but I'll read the entire show notes. It's one of the things on YouTube that I absolutely love about TED, the TED Talks channel, is they have everything. They have the transcript, the notes per the sections of the video. So I can literally go find the content I need, read it, and then if I want to hear it and process it differently, I can play the video and hear it as well or watch it. And it allows me to consume and really be able to process it in the way that my mind works best.
Exactly. And I think too, like, I can't stand it when there's like, I go to a sales page or something and there's only a video, because I don't want to sit there and watch your 45-minute video. Like, I cut to the chase, give me the detail. Like, I'm not here for that, that drives me bonkers. So like, there's all kinds of reasons. And I think you're right. I think blogs for a long time have been sort of the forgotten stepchild, or whatever you want to say. Because other things are flashier, it's more fun, it's more exciting, it's more interesting. But, there's research out there that, especially in the B2B market, but also B2C, blogs are still the most effective way. Blogs
don't do that.
Right.
Actually learn how to tell stories, or hire Lacy's company so that they can actually, because let's not put people through bad storytelling either. Like, let's actually normalize great storytelling. And I'm going to put a stand here for anybody watching this who's with me. Like, let's normalize great storytelling.
This is not your thing. Like, you probably did not, like you said earlier, you did not get into your business necessarily to be a content marketer, unless you're a weirdo like me. So there's no shame in getting help, and there's absolutely no shame
Yeah,
in
I think I
giving
froze
somebody
again.
else. That's okay. Only briefly.
Great. I'm back. So yeah, I think this is interesting. I think so we talk about, so the call I was doing this morning was like, it's called the Profit Plan. It's a program I have. And one of the things I talk about is actually creating support structures and systems in order to help you do your business better. And like I said, you can be the best bread baker, but you aren't necessarily the best customer service. You're not necessarily the best talking about the bread. Maybe you don't even really, you hate putting things into recipe format or whatever. Hire people who are. Don't struggle through it. And people are like, oh, well, I can't afford that yet. Create the pricing structure that allows you to do it in the quickest way possible, because you're then going to grow faster and you're not going to burn yourself out. Handing over all of my content structure to like a company like yours means that I get to show up on podcasts. It means I get to take time off, and I don't live near a beach, but if I hypothetically live near a beach, I would go spend time on a beach. Like, there are things that we need to do in the world that allow us to be more creative and more ourselves and nourish ourselves. Let people who naturally and also choose to do this because they enjoy it.
Right.
We forget that, right? We forget that people are like, I just want some juicy content that someone else came up with, and I want to write this delicious story about it because it's satisfying for me. I know a ghost writer, and she literally is like, it brings me such glee to see a book that I helped bring, hit the bestseller list. And then everyone's like, don't you want to write your own bestseller? She's like, meh.
Yeah, right. It's so funny. We're all such nerds. We love learning about other people's businesses. Like, we get really into it. And we are always like, oh my God, did you read what so-and-so is talking about this week? Our Slack channel is hilarious for that. But we also love doing super creative things. So if you have a crazy idea that you're not sure how to bring to life, please DM me, because here's a great example. We just got
I want to know what crazy is to you.
Yeah. So we just got there's a new Canadian brand. She makes tea. She's just about to launch, and the branding is very lush and French and romantic.
Okay.
And so when she got on a call with us, she's like, I have this nutso idea. I want to write a romance story that they get via email. And I was like, holy crap. I have a published romance novelist on my team. And so she's signed a 12-month contract with us. We are writing a novella in 12 parts that people will get via email. And every month's chapter is inspired by one of the teas. And so a couple of weeks before it goes live, people will get an email and say, hey, next month is Blueberry Bliss. If you'd like to sip while you read, order now so it can come, right? So it's not like super heavy, like the characters are not drinking Blueberry Bliss in this story, but we're trying to make it like, it's all about taking a moment for yourself. That's her brand. And so we want to give them this like juicy little romance story. That's my favorite right now that we're doing. That's super creative and weird, and I love it.
No, and I do love that, because it really opens you up for your brand to start to also cross different niche markets. Another person who came on Big Questions, Medium Coffee, she actually is an author, so she writes her own books. One of the things I said is that was really cool is in the crochet world, the fiber arts world, is that they have these like mystery crochet projects or yarn you have no idea. You're making a hat. You don't know what the hat is going to end up with, but it also comes with a fantasy or mystery story.
Yes.
Right. And I said, like partner with a tea or a coffee company, and you've got this like trifecta of enjoyment where people get together in groups or by themselves. They listen or they read the story, they do the crochet project, and then they have a sip of tea or adult beverages, but like having these cross promotional. So not only are you marketing your story, you're marketing your the tea, you're marketing the crochet to all of the different audiences that enjoy that. So in your case, romance novels, people who read romance are maybe likely to curl up with a warm beverage, a warm tea. And so
you're looking for some self-care and some self-love there.
Absolutely. Or, people who have never read a romance novel but do enjoy a cup of tea, are like, maybe I'll try this. So you then branched into these different kind of niches. So I love that. I love those kind of like, it really opens up your business to an audience that maybe you didn't consider before or have access to.
Right. And sometimes we love coming up with these sort of out of the box ideas. We came up with a gamification idea for a company for their discount codes. She wanted to offer discount codes so that different people could enjoy the products. And so we came up with this whole, like, almost like a quest, because that was very
Yes.
with her brand.
Yes.
And we've designed challenges that go for people. So lots of different fun. The more outside the box, the happier I am, because I geek out about all that stuff.
I love that. And I think that really gets people thinking about what content marketing is and what it isn't. Now, here's an interesting thing. As a thought, I'm bringing this back to thought leaders.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like, we talked about this as being that experiment of what sticks, or as, you know, how do you communicate your ideas? Bringing gamification or these kind of like cross niche, it really it's really interesting. It opens you up to different audiences and how they interpret the ideas that you have, which then, to me, that's exciting for me, because it's like I think nothing great is created in isolation. I think we need to have all these different experiences and contrasts coming at us and being like, oh, that's what you're experiencing right now, well, let me throw this idea and see how it, you know, and then throw it back to me. Like, I was kind of think of like ideas as like this game of dodgeball. Sometimes we jump over it. Sometimes it hits us. Sometimes we
throw it in the face.
yeah. Sometimes it hits us right in the face. And we're like, I've never experienced this ball like this before. You know, like it's definitely, you know, that's how I see the idea. But it's really interesting as thought leaders to increase, to put in these things like gamification, or, you know, the idea quest, right? Like, let's explore this together. What are the pieces that we need? Here's a base idea that I'm, you know, formulating. Let's make a game of this. How do we get to the end? And what are the things that we need to bring in here? What are the things we need to gather on this quest? Like, kind of like a scavenger hunt of perspectives or experiences. Let's go find those people. Let's have those conversations. And then that's a whole content scheme where you have an idea that you started with, and then you engage your audience to go find the different perspectives that are going to contrast or complement the idea to build it up even bigger.
Right. And, you know, anything that gets people engaged in that way is going to be successful, right? Because even if it's only sort of adjacent to what you sell or your brand or whatever, it's still going to get people talking about you. It's still going to keep you top of mind for when they need whatever it is you sell, right? So there's no losing here. This is all win-win.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about content marketing strategy. And I might freeze here, so, you know, feel free to talk about it if I do freeze again.
Okay.
But here's the thing that is interesting to me, and I again, content, communications, whole background, so I know the idea of it. I'm horrible at it, though. I will be like, here's something I want to sell. I'm going to talk about selling it, and I'm really good at talk about selling it, but I'm not necessarily good about the lead up, because I'm already having that. I'm autistic, first of all, and I have the conversations in my head a lot, and then I just assume other people have heard what's happening in my head.
Sure.
Yeah. So, you know, when we look at, like, again, neurovariant people, but also just people who are just so consumed into their business, how do they start looking at the content in between the launches? How do they work with you and work within their business and their content to create that strategy?
Well, so the first thing to understand, I think, is to understand why it's important and why it's valuable, right? Because sometimes we put so much emphasis on the launch itself that we forget the in-between launch content, and it can fall off the radar. It can fall off the to-do list because there's more important shit to do, right? That's how we think about it. But the problem with that is when you do it that way, where it's like, okay, radio silence, and then, oh, I'm launching something. You may still have lots of people that are interested, but you're going to have to work a lot harder to sell to them, right? So
not just to sell to them, though, but also technology is against you, because even
everything's going to go wrong because it's all high stakes.
Well, also because, like, email service providers, what people don't know, and here's an email marketer, so I can verify this, but, like, if you're not emailing consistently to that person in that list, if you just email them every 6 months, you're going to go to their junk mail because the ISP doesn't recognize you. So science aside, never mind the business of selling. If what Lacy's about technology to science of the ESP. Okay, go on. I had to interrupt you. I had to put in this.
Okay. That's all good.
But talk about, like, how you're going to have to work harder.
So like, let's think about it this way. Let's say, you know, you need X number of people on your list or in your audience in order to make your sales goal. Well, we can run ads, we can pay money, we can get those leads, right? But you still have to warm them up. You still have to, like, and so you're going to have to work really hard. You have to get them on a webinar, get them on a phone call, whatever it is, to warm them up in that short space of time in order for them to say yes to you. what if instead you know that your ultimate goal is X number of people by this date. So I'm going to spend this next 6 months growing my list. I'm going to spend this next 6 months nurturing them, warming them up, getting them to know me. I'm going to spend this time overcoming objections before they even know they have the objection, right? That way, all of a sudden, then when you say, hey, I've got this offer, people are like, take my money, I'm ready, because you've already done all the hard work. You still need your webinar, you still need your sales calls, whatever it is, but it's going to be so much easier to sell the thing because you've done the hard work and it hasn't felt like work to your audience. I feel like that's a really important part. We all know when we're being sold to, and we put up our little antennas and say, she's trying to convince me, she's trying to manipulate me, she's trying to get me to buy something. Whereas if you're just being, you like my antennas? Whereas if you're just being useful, you're sharing value, you're sharing blog posts, videos, whatever it is in between, their barriers are lower. They're much more likely to listen to what you're actually having to say. They're much more likely to, if you're like, hey, if you think you don't have time for this sort of thing, here's why you need to do it. And they're like, maybe that's a good point, right? You're overcoming objections before they even have them. This is super important, and it makes your job as to sell even easier. And, I'm saying launches, but it could be anything. Even if you have an evergreen product or service, this still applies.
Yeah. Or you're selling bread every week. Like we kind of like in the online business world, people are like, that only applies to online business. And I'm like, no, it applies to whether you have a brick and mortar, because that's too, is like brick and mortar has a bad habit of, like forgetting until they need to all of a sudden have a sale because sales are low. So then they'll put out a whole bunch of stuff, right? A really good example of marketing throughout the year that I know from the maker creative world is a colleague of mine through Etsy was telling me about a maker of theirs that only does their shows, so once or twice a year, and they sell stationery, books and stuff like that they make. So they only want to sell once or twice a year. They don't want to people any other time of the year. They don't want to like have to ship things out. They just twice a year, you either come to the show or you order online and we ship it out. That's it. So if this person only marketed a week before the show, not only would their social media, their email list, no one would be able to get it because it's been stagnant, and that's the way algorithms work. But people will be like, who? What? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Whereas what they do is the other 10, 11 months of the year that they're not doing shows, that they're showing those behind the scenes. They're showing it being made. They're showing the characters. They're showing the details. They're showing all of the, effort. They're showing these sneak peeks. They're giving people an opportunity to get on waiting lists. They're doing VIP email lists where people get the inside scoop. They're doing, memberships where you get this Patreon more stuff. There's so much you can build into that, where you have this ongoing content creation. And then bam, the show happens and they sell, like their year's worth of like their, stuff, but that's what they built it.
Yeah. I think too, like the model of jewelry designers or fashion designers that release a collection, same idea, right? People like when those Target collections come out, that's like a, what do you call it? Collaboration with somebody. Yeah. Those things sell out in like 5 minutes, right? But it's because they're doing all the marketing ahead of time. Like, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
Building the anticipation.
Right. And we've worked with product-based businesses. We had a great client for several years who sold pants to men, like travel clothing that doesn't look like travel clothing. We did great work with them. The only reason we parted ways because he got big and he needed somebody in-house.
Yeah.
Which is great. Which is great. I said, go with God. I'm happy for you. So, but it works for all different kinds of things. It works for coaches or people who have like, coaches don't always launch if they don't have a group program. If it's like a one-to-one type coaching, we can still design these sales cycles. Even if you don't have a launch, we can design these sales cycles with your content.
Yeah.
Where you're hitting the different points that people need to understand in order to say yes to you. That's really what we're trying to do. We're giving them the information they need to say yes.
Oh, I love that. That's a juicy little bite there, Lacy. Giving the information. And I do agree with this. And it's funny because I talk about this a lot, but like I love when people have imposter syndrome and they're a business owner because they're about to build the best sales page they've ever had. Because everything that goes in their head about their imposter syndrome is actually the objections that their client will have to buying from them. So go and answer them. Like write out every single one of those. Like, oh, I'm not an expert. How are you an expert? You know, instead of like,
feel so much better once you do.
Absolutely. Like, stop it. I'm like, stop ignoring your imposter syndrome. Everybody out there who's like, crush or conquer your imposter syndrome. Like, stop ignoring your imposter syndrome. Use it to make cash. Use it to make so much money. Like, go forth and make profit off of your fear. Like, your fears are there to help you make it even better. And that's the thing, is you bring your imposter syndrome to Lacy's group and team and said, listen, here's all the objections I think that people are going to have to buy from you. You know what they're going to do too? They're going to go, excellent. Yeah.
That's a blog post. That's a blog post. That's a blog post.
That's a blog post. Every single one of these fears is a topic that we're going to maximize and we're going to search engine optimize, because people are searching for that too. And they're not just searching for the fear that you don't have, the lack of it. They are searching for the lack of it, but they're also searching for the outcome or the opportunity that you say yes. So there's actually two ways. Each fear is like two separate columns of content. You can get so much from it. Too much content. You speak to the people who are looking for the lack of it, and you speak to the people who are looking for the solution or the outcome. And you 100%. Are driving both to your content.
I have to say here, so we work with, we partner with Meg Casebolt of Love at First Search for our SEO. She's amazing, but I learned this from her. And so a lot of times we'll have coaches, especially, or sometimes service providers who are like, well, your imposter syndrome reminded me of this, because we had a client who is a coach for people who have imposter syndrome, but she doesn't use the term imposter syndrome, because it's not technically a medical syndrome. She says imposter complex. Yeah. So what we learned from Meg was but nobody searches for imposter complex, right? Yeah. So every single post we wrote, we would include a parenthetical somewhere that says, hey, we use imposter complex, not imposter syndrome, and here's why, and link to the post that explained why she said that. And it was great. It was such a great thing. But the thing is, even if there's something you don't want to say, even if you're like, it's not this, but that's what everybody's Googling, you can create a post that educates them, that flips it on its head. You can work with the Google search. So if everybody's searching something and you're like, it's not that, that's okay. Put that in the title and say, here's why it's not that, because that's still going to come up really well in search. And we can grab you those people and help educate them and move them along.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, these are things, like, these are content pieces, even just that one little content piece about why we use imposter complex as opposed to imposter syndrome. That's content for days across all of your social media. That's like a whole podcast. That's a whole YouTube video. That's your blog post. That's your paragraph on your, main website. Like, there's so much you can do with that. That's your call out. I could literally create an entire board on Pinterest of 30 or 40, 50 different pieces of content around that one single statement.
Right. And so, like, every single piece can be multiplied into so many different, I worked with a woman once who would do one about 30-minute video a month. And it would go to YouTube, and then between her team and our team, we would turn it into 30 plus pieces of content for the entire month, because there was enough there. Of course, it was deep and juicy and meaty. So the video went and lived on YouTube or whatever, but then we could turn that into 4 emails, 4 blog posts, 1 million different Facebook posts, right?
Guess what's happening with this after we go live? I mean, that's the reality. That's exactly. And I'll tell everybody this, like, I'm having this conversation live with Lacy. You're watching on Facebook, you're watching it on YouTube, you're watching on LinkedIn, wherever you're watching it live. It's going to be a podcast. It's a blog post on our website. It is social media content. It's Pinterest content. Lacy's going to show up on your timeline if you follow me anywhere over the next year. It's not just this next month. It's over the next year, the next 2 years. And the reason is, like, I know that there's going to be points where I need to take 3 months off to go have a vacation somewhere, and I'm creating a new product. Guess what? I then have a year's worth of content where I can reuse and grab and say, hey, did you remember that time I talked to Lacy? Well, let's talk to her. Like, let's revisit it.
Well, and there will be people who never saw it the first time who are like, ooh, who's this Lacy chick? This could be interesting, right? And that's what we do. That's how we help people. We take those pieces you may already be creating, you may already have. We may not have to create anything new. We're just turning it into a different format, a different doorway for people to find you.
Yeah, I like reposted a video. I was laughing. It made me laugh because I think I'm funny. But this video that kind of went really well on Facebook. It's like me as a potato. It's a thing, and people send me a lot of potato links now as a result of it. But I reposted it on TikTok. It got like no traction on TikTok, and so I reposted. I was like, repost of my least viral content, and people are like, "Oh my god, why did I not see this the first time?" And like, I've been following you. Like, I was like your number 2 follower, and I never saw this. I'm like, exactly, right? You're just not always going to see everything, and even if you did see it, the reaffirmation, maybe you skipped over parts, maybe you know, like there's a reason why we reread books, like beloved books, and we watch movies over. How many times have you watched, you know, your favorite movie in the 90s? There's a reason why we get different things every time.
Yep, 100%. And the thing is, like, if this is something I've been saying a lot lately, but if you feel like you've said it all, it's probably because you have, but it doesn't mean that your audience has heard it all, right? And so you're too close to it. A lot of times clients will come to me and they'll be like, I've said everything. I don't know what to write about anymore. There's nothing left under the sun. I'm like, cool, let's start over. Let's do it all again.
Yeah.
Because not everybody, your audience changes, people come and go. Especially like in theory, in a perfect world, we're always adding new people, right? So they're not going to click back 9 pages on my blog to read my entire back catalog. They're just
right.
Not. So
right.
Yeah. You can repurpose all that goodies.
Yeah. And sometimes like I said, even if I did see it, it feels good to see it again. You know, like there's really nice, like when people, even on my Facebook, when people share a post that I remember seeing 9 years ago on their Facebook, I'm like, yeah, that's good.
There for that. Yeah.
I was there, but also, ooh, you know, like, and I've seen like some people share like, wow, I do not have the same viewpoint, you know, and you're like, ooh, right. And that's thing you can do too, is like, if you're progressing, even as a thought leader. So it's like, if you did that thing where you're like, okay, here's an idea I have. And then 4 years later, you're like, this was an idea I had 4 years ago. Here's why I no longer think this way. Right. Yeah. And that's a whole new content stream.
Yeah. Right. And I think a lot of people get really tied up in their underwear about having a schedule or having a very rigid framework of what they're going to post every day or whatever. And I certainly have a system and a framework that we use because we have to start somewhere. But at the same time, it's like, you don't have to be that precious about it, really. I always tell our clients we make an editorial client calendar when a client works with us, but I'm like, these are not written in stone. So if you have an amazing idea and want to talk about something else, let's change it, right? Like we don't have to follow the idea. The reason we do that though, is so that when inspiration doesn't strike, we have a plan B, right? That's why we do an editorial calendar, more so than being like, okay, this is exactly what you have to post every day. And if you miss one, it's going to suck and everything breaks, right? Because that's not true.
Yeah. So if you have taken nothing else away from our talk today, don't get your underwear
tied up in your underwear about your
tied up in your underwear. Don't get your ginch in a knot, as my grandma would say. Stop getting your ginch in a knot. Don't get tied up in your underwear about the right way of doing it either. I know it's like, it can be over. I recently was like going through all the stuff that you need to know about YouTube. And I was listening to this guy who's like done amazing things. He helps clients, like, and you know what he said? He's like, if nothing else, just show up.
God, isn't that true? That is true for content too. My marketing philosophy has always been show up and be useful. That's what I'm doing right now today. Like, I think I was the first person that put my hand up when you said you were looking for new people to come on here. Because I was like, show up and be useful. That's how I reach people. That's how I get new clients. Period.
Absolutely. And you never know who's watching, and you never, like you said, people, they might not be watching the live right now, but when we reissue this or put out something in a couple of weeks, they're seeing that, and it's really interesting too, because I'm a scientist, so I experiment, and we started doing this, and I didn't think anybody watched them. Like, we might get like 3 or 4 people. We've had some people put out comments here, they're watching it live, which is great. But it's the people who watch it after and who are like, I'm currently watching your live right now. Like, and they're sending me, look, I'm currently watching your live right now, and this is giving me so many ideas. I'm like, from 3 weeks ago? It's not live. Like, we don't call it live. I don't know if we can call it live. It was live at the time.
Right. Now it's just
this is my
watching your live.
Yeah, this is my sloppy content from, but I'm like, oh, cool. But it made me realize too, I'm like, oh, that's why I have to make it into a podcast. That's why I have to put it on the blog. That's why I have to, because there is no timeline for when people consume content. They're creating that timeline, not me. I'm just putting it out there and letting it be available for when they need it or when they're looking for it. And I think that's, to me, that's content marketing on your website, is making sure that it's there for when they need it.
Right. And if we do a good job, if we do our job well, that content is your 24/7, 365 salesperson, right? Because when somebody Googles in the middle of the night, like that's always the question, like, what are people Googling at 3 a.m.? I don't know that they're actually Googling like content marketing topics at 3 a.m. But if they are and they find my website, that's when they feel the pain, and that's when they want to contact me, right? And so it's mine and my clients' salesperson when they're not online.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great lesson, because honestly, I am looking up stuff at my business at 2 a.m. because nobody else is asking me. Well, except for like my clients in like the UK and like France, like they're messaging me at that time because they just woke up. But like for the most part, that's my quiet time, and I can actually kind of go into my business. So I think that's good. Okay, well, this has been awesome. But before we go, I want to ask everybody, what's an obstacle that you're facing right now in your business?
Yeah, so this is kind of our perennial obstacle, but we are always looking for ways to make the lead pipeline more systematized. I've tried
Mhm.
lots and lots of different things. All of them work to a degree.
Mhm.
But in my ideal perfect world, I would have something where I can flip a switch and suddenly we have a consistent pipeline of leads of people who want to come in. And
Yes.
that just we haven't cracked that nut yet,
Yes.
because right now, to this day, probably 70% or more of our business comes from referrals, which is incredibly amazing and makes me feel very honored. But it's also not something you can predict, right? It comes in
No.
spurts and ebbs and flows. So that's my obstacle. That's like seems to be my perennial obstacle, is how do I create that really consistent pipeline of well qualified leads? And if I
Yeah.
ever figure it out, I'll come back and tell you all about it.
It's interesting because I always get like these spams on LinkedIn where they're like, I see you're a coach. Do you want a consistent pipeline of qualified lead, whatever you just said? And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, so knowing what I know about sales and marketing, if I hire you and you're going to go contact 30 people on my behalf, what if all 30 say yes?
Right. I had this exact conversation today because we're considering we would like to hire maybe a salesperson who would work like a fractional salesperson, because
That's right. Yeah.
we don't have enough for full time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I got on the call with this guy today, and I told him, I was like, we could only handle onboarding 3, maybe 4 retainer clients a month. That would be the most we could handle. And he's like, oh no, we do 100 calls a month and we close at least 20. That's like the bare minimum for our setters. And I'm like, okay, thanks, bye. Because like, there's no way. They would not be well qualified leads, I'm betting, right? Because if they're working on a numbers crunch like that, they just want quantity. They're not looking
Mm-hmm.
at quality. And B, there's no way in God's green earth I could handle 20 new people a month for our service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the reality. That's reality. So I want to point out to everybody, because people think like, oh, I'm just going to have 300 people on my doorstep. But the thing is like you need the
Your
systems, you need
business
the
would
people.
break.
Your business will break, and that's like, and it does break businesses. We see businesses actually go under when they are at their most successful. They're busy
Yep.
because they just don't. They can't find the people to support. They don't have the systems in place. They need all of these like kind of infrastructure. They weren't ready for it. And then what happens is people are like, I don't like. I can't get service, or I can't. So then they go away and they don't necessarily come back. They leave bad reviews. Like there's so much stuff that happens. So having that well-controlled pipeline, we'll use pipeline as that, but having that, being able to turn on that faucet, it is a challenge in business that we don't talk a lot about. We're always just trying to get more leads, more leads, more leads.
I don't need a ton. I need a few really well-qualified people every month. Like if I had eight really well-qualified leads a month on my calendar to talk to, I would probably close 50% of them. That's my average. And that would be amazing. That's all I want is 8.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
Yeah. It is. So, okay, anyone watching that, I mean, I have some ideas, but I'm like, I don't have the actual thing. But if anyone else is watching this, like, let's hear it. Like, post a comment, because I think this is, yeah, it is one of those things. And it's hard because, like, we always talk about content marketing. And, I was giving that example where the maker, she knows that that's when she turns on that flood, but she also only has still a limited number of stock. There's still people who are going to be disappointed because it's sold out the first day and they couldn't come on the Tuesday. They needed to come on the Friday. And could you hold this? And all of these things that are in there in that business are things that you have to consider, not only to keep your customers happy, because you need to keep your customers happy so that they come back, but you happy. We don't need to be burning out Lacy. We don't need to be burning out her team in order to all of a sudden go, oh, all 8 of those people said yes.
Right.
Now what?
Well, and the other part of this is that my business tends to have a very long sales cycle, meaning that people will hear about me here, and then maybe in a few years, they'll be ready to work with me, right? I had actually a person tell me I had been on their vision board for 3 years, and I was deeply, deeply honored by that. But it also showed me that, like, what I'm doing, showing up, creating content, talking, continuing to be visible is working, right? Because I wouldn't have been on that person's vision board for 3 years running if I didn't keep showing up, right? I would have fallen off in favor of somebody else who was top of mind for them. So something to consider if you also have a long sales cycle.
So keep showing up. That's the other thing. If nothing else that you take away, keep showing up, because it is a long game. Business is a long game. We think that we're just going to hang up our shingle and then we're going to have 30 amazing clients come in, but that's not how it works. And also, you can be in business for 5, 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden nobody comes through that door. So it is being able to build that resiliency and that ability to to pivot and to kind of try out new different things. Okay, so we talked about an obstacle, very real. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I know other people are going to be like, wait, what? Yeah, it happens. And I know it sounds like people are like, if they haven't had any sales for a while, they're literally talking about if all 20 say yes. This is, it's still a problem. And it's like creating these solutions and being able to say, how would we be able to throttle that out? How do you choose who to work first? These are things that big corporations also do. Like, you got a project team, you got a central IT, and you've got 9 different business units. They all come and say, I want my project done tomorrow. These are skills that you're building also to grow your business. There might be a point in time where you can say yes to all 20, but you actually needed 30, but you created the structures now to be able to respond to it as you grow your business. So very real. What's an opportunity? What's something that you are, and I know you mentioned the Thought Leader Lab, but like, what's an opportunity that you see that your business can take advantage of and grow with?
Yeah. So Thought Leader Lab is one. Like I said, we're beta testing the course right now, and it's amazing. I get all giddy when they publish things. But like, look, they're doing it. And that's more for people who are looking to step into their thought leadership. Like, it's more of a coaching. And we'll probably be launching that again sometime at the end of this year or early next year. But the other opportunity I'm seeing right now is for me to consult with teams. So a lot of the businesses we are talking to right now already have a small team. They have a VA, maybe they have a copywriter internally, but they're like, we don't know how to create that system or go back and look through our blog posts and decide what the goal is. We don't have that system in place, that SOP. Teach us how to do it. And so I think that might also be another opportunity, is something I can come in and do a VIP day with teams, start with the CEO and say, give me the mission, give me the vision, help me understand what we want to accomplish. And then in the afternoon, really get down to the nitty gritty with the team and say, okay, let's build this out. Let's build the framework. Let's build the SOP, so that then everybody's on the same page. Everybody's got buy-in, and the visionary, the CEO, could just be like, yes, it's done. Right. Even if it's not my team doing it, if we can help, great. But even if I'm just showing up for the VIP day to make it better in their world, I think that's something.
Well, even like your long-term clients, like you said, the guy who makes pants, and I don't know why I can't say pants without like the pants, but it's, like, he's grown his team, he's building something, but maybe it's something that you offer those clients too, that have outgrown necessarily what you can provide. They need an in-house. You come in and do like a quarterly workshop, right? So it's just fine tunes it a little bit, because this is the reality. Again, I say no great idea is done in isolation. when I was a solo practitioner in a corporate job, I loved having other people, other experts come in and analyze what I was doing and give me feedback, because I get like this, right?
Mhm.
And also I can't always do the training that I need or like to keep up to date because I'm so busy. Having a company whose sole job is to be the expert outside of that, come in and give that objective look, do an analysis, see if there's any gaps that you could possibly take advantage of or close up so that you're not leaking profits, but also to give that really lovely like outsider's view, which I think we don't talk enough about how important it is to have somebody else take a little look over your stuff and find all the ways that you missed stuff.
Yeah. Or just different opportunities, different ways of phrasing things, different interesting ideas. That's my jam, man. I love that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's definitely, I've started putting a toe in the water, saying like, I'm offering a couple of these VIP days to see who's interested and see how it works out.
I love that. That's a cool opportunity. And it's a great way to grow your business without necessarily having to add in more, extra team to support more clients. Well, thank you so much. We went this was like a 60-minute talk.
I love it.
I love it. So definitely come back. Let's talk more about content marketing.
Anytime.
Let's anytime for you. Like you're like, I feel like I want to talk about this. You come on to Big Questions Medium Coffee and have chat more. I really appreciate your time here with us. How do people find you and your company?
Yeah, so we are at lacyboggs.com. That's the best place to find us. If you're interested in what our packages look like and things like that, it's lacyboggs.com/undercover, because we go undercover as you. And, my blog obviously is a great place for me, but I'm also really active on Instagram and Facebook. So come check me out.
I love it. And then, we'll just keep funneling through this YouTube. We'll keep funneling your 8 to 10 people endlessly. And I just want to say something too. Is really interesting because like really retainer clients are amazing. The one-off projects are good for a little spice, but the retainer means that you can actually plan for growth and know that you're going to be paying your employees. It's interesting because you never quite know when those retainer clients are not a client, right? So it's like, again, that pipeline is because you're always at the kind of you never know what your clients are going to do.
Well, especially because we ask for a 6-month commitment in the first time, but then it goes month to month. So after that, like we have people who've been with us for 2 or 3 years, and then they give us 30-day notice because something changed. And so you're right. Yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, I have a spot I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, but it's exciting. I mean, as a business owner, as a service provider, I know it's exciting because it's like all of a sudden you're like, wait, I have a new client. Amazing. But then you're like, where is that client coming from? It's like, and again, it's too, it's like always like, you think about this, you put out these offers. It's like, I have this writing, I have an opportunity to do some content writing. People are like, ooh, in 2 months, I'll be ready because I'm just currently
all the time. And P.S., you're never ready. It's like buying a house or having a kid. You're never actually ready. You just kind of have to do it.
And also, even if the course isn't built or even if the product isn't designed, hire the content marketer to start putting out the content as you're building it, because again, you're warming up your traffic and you're not worried about these crickets at the 2-week launch mark when all of a sudden you're trying to scramble. So yes, you're never quite ready. Hire the support, get people working for you in your business, doing the things that they can do better than you, and building really prosperous, resilient businesses. Thank you so much, Lacy. What a joy. Thanks for everything. Thanks for, talking through the glitches of when my internet sucks. I really appreciate it. I'm going to end. Thank you, everybody, for watching this live. If you're watching this on the replay, let us know.